guest is speaking. So before there was an echo when Santita was speaking, when you were speaking over. Alrighty, I'm speaking now, but I honestly didn't hear an echo the second time around. Okay, there is residual. Are you outside, honey? No, I'm inside. I'm indoors.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I just heard.
You still hear it? Do you still hear the echo?
I'm gonna try some there real quick.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. That is
all right. Can you guys speak real quick?
Sure. Having a conversation.
Can you still hear like an echo?
Can you still hear an echo? Marnie?
Marnie?
No, I put her on hold because I know she's talking on her Bluetooth, I believe, or through her car. I want to see if maybe that's the echo.
Okay. All right.
Attorney Rodriguez, are you hearing any echoes?
No, I honestly have not heard any echoes. This is the second time around.
You haven't heard anything like within the last 20 seconds of like an echo?
No.
Okay, then it might be Dr. Reeves' Bluetooth from her car. Here, let me put her back on.
Okay.
All right, how about now?
Santita would have to speak.
Hello, how you doing? Hey. Can you hear me? Do we have an echo?
I can hear you. There's a point after. Did you hear it, Coach May? Like after she?
I'm on my end. I'm actually not hearing an echo.
Okay. Can you? Is it? Okay.
But Dr. Reeves, the reason why I put you on hold was I was trying to see if maybe like your Bluetooth or like the speakers from your cars maybe the echo. And when I did put you on hold, Attorney Rodriguez was able to hear Santita. She was able to hear herself without any echo. So I don't know if maybe that would be the issue, but right now I think it's fine. Most of you guys are hearing some like echo that I can't.
Yeah, I'm on a hands-free, but the echo is not coming. You can hear an echo when it's coming from this side.
Okay.
But I need to see when it goes on, when she goes on the radio. Because I can hear somebody right now as I'm talking to you.
Okay.
Like something's being done right now. That's what I mean. So you're hearing that residual effect?
I heard an echo coming from your mic a few seconds ago, but other than that, everything else sounds fine. I just turned off the auto mix completely. That maybe helped. Before I had it all the way down on the volume, but are you noticing any difference?
We'll see when she goes out. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Well, we're already up on Facebook, and so, Coach May, I just need you to hear. Let me know what you're hearing on Facebook. Okay, and everyone, definite echo on YouTube. Linda said there's an echo. She said there's an echo on YouTube. Can you?
The echo coming from YouTube?
I'm muting right now. I'm going to mute right now, and I'll tell you if there's an echo.
Okay, because Linda said there's an echo on YouTube. Okay. So, hey, everyone, I'm bringing you all into the sound check. Okay. So let us know if you are hearing an echo anywhere. Okay.
Is Maddie still on? Can she speak?
Yes. Please, Maddie.
She's on. But I honestly don't hear an echo on my end either.
Okay, but we're trying to find out. There's great sound on Facebook. Thank you, Mark. What about on YouTube? Let me know what you're hearing on YouTube, okay? We're trying to get this right. I'm going to get one of my engineers, just so that you all know, from one of my shows to come in and help us with this effort. So I want to thank you all for working with us. Okay.
It sounds fine right now.
He sounds fine now. YouTube is good. Effie said, okay, thank you. You know, Effie, I'm gonna get Bob Facuda over here. He's gonna meet me over here on Monday. Okay. So just so that you know, I'm so excited that he's gonna help me. Effie knows Bob. Effie's one of the legends in radio here, in really in all of gospel radio, in inspirational radio. And so I'm going to. Yep.
Time for you to go up.
I am up. I've been up.
You're up. Okay.
Oh yeah. I've been up. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, have a great show.
Okay. Thank you so much. We're good. Thank you all. All right. Thank you. Love you all. Thank you. Okay. Okay. All right. So. Okay. All right. So we are good, everybody. Okay. There it is. Okay. All right. So we do that. All right, everybody. Bob is the best. No, I'm not too kind. I know who you are. And people should know who you are. Everyone. 2. Okay. Okay. All right. So here we go. We're coming up. Yep. I had a nice, really, really great talk with Bob. You know, he's over at WGN now. Just so you know, if you don't know that already. And so he's going to give me some time on Monday and really just help me to get the sound together on the show from here. Because since I got a new iPad, I'm not able to connect directly to my sound, which is why you all are listening to me over my iPad as well as the mobile phone. And that is because I want you all, I know how important the visual experience is to the viewers, to the listeners now. So thank you for being so patient. Everyone, today we're talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson. It turns out that she is one step closer to getting on the Supreme Court. And we are very... Brown Jackson. It turns out that we're excited about that.
I'm going to bring up the Reverend.
Okay. And fantastic. Thank you. And thank you for working with us, okay?
Yeah, no problem. He should be up now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pastor, how are you?
I'm amazing. How are you today?
I am doing great, and I can't wait to get together with you next week. And they have some lovely places where we can eat out in Skokie next week. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, Skokie is nice. But you know, the best TJ Maxx in the region is out there too. My mother and I go to that.
Okay, all right.
Oh, it's like that's the one she and I go to. Fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but how are your parents doing?
They're doing great. Thank you for asking.
Please give them my love. You know I love your parents. Love them.
Always.
Let me do this.
Yes.
Okay, just trying to get these papers in order. All right, so okay. All right, everybody. So here we go. Thank you. Oh, I had to reach out to my old engineer, but he's a brilliant guy, and so he's going to be coming over here next Monday to really help me to pull the sound together. I couldn't do it this Monday because I'm just overwhelmed. Has Jonathan reached you?
We have talked recently when he first made his move. We talked.
Okay. Okay, he is overwhelmed, and I think it's a little tough for him to hand things over to people. But would you mind giving him a call?
I can do that today.
I really appreciate that. I got to tell you something as soon as we get off the air. Something that some people decided that he needed to do. But he'll be on here tomorrow, everybody. My brother, Congressman, excuse me, he's congressional candidate. Uh, I was thinking of Jesse, Jonathan Jackson. He will be on tomorrow to talk about his candidacy and, talking about the economy and so much. So many people, Pastor Thurston, are looking at Ukraine. And I was talking to several people yesterday, and they said, look, I sympathize with anyone who's been invaded and who's being overwhelmed by a more powerful force. But what we're dealing with right now, they said, I'm not eating. This inflation is killing me. And then, there's just a lot of unevenness. And what we're looking for here on this show, I'm looking for justice. I'm looking for peace. Too many people are dying. We don't want any of that. So stand by, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars over here. Thank you so much, Diane. We're good on Facebook on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Please meet us over there and meet us on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube page. And everybody become my friend on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. The Santita Jackson page is just a landing page, and Facebook, they are kicking people off. They top out at 5,000. So I really want you all to join me over there. My activity is at Santita Jackson and Friends. I want you to call me or text me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Joyce or Diane or someone, please post that number up there for us, 773-763-WCPT. And let's talk about Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is closer today than she was yesterday to becoming a Supreme Court justice, the first Black woman to be on the Supreme Court in the history of the Republic. What will all of that mean? What do you think about that? She barely got through. Well, in fact, the committee was deadlocked. So you had to undergo some extraordinary measures in order to get the vote to the Senate, which is where it is headed now. And we had 3 senators who are Republican who joined with the Democrats, Senators Murkowski, Romney, and Collins. Senator Murkowski is up for re-election, and she's from Alaska, of course. Senator Romney is from Utah. They've always been a progressive Republican family, what people would used to call Rockefeller Republicans, people you could work with. And then you've got Senator Susan Collins, who's also middle of the road as well. So grateful for their support. Want to hear what you're thinking about that. We're going to be talking about Ukraine, getting an update from Professor David Gibbs from the University of Arizona and Bryce Green. What is going on there? We're so troubled by what we're seeing in Bucha and all of the alleged, as the mainstream media, corporate media, shall I call them, they're calling them alleged war crimes. And we would have to go to the ICC, which is something that typically America has shunned. The International Criminal Court. So we're going to talk about that. And then, of course, no surprise here, Doctors Verholden and Knighton will talk about the fact that COVID-19 was hardest on the poor and people of color. So the poor covers every color, but the poor and the people of color were hit the hardest by COVID-19. And when you're watching the COVID aid dollars go to zero, that does not bode well even today. So March Madness, everybody, it is official. South Carolina, they are the champions on the women's side, and on the men's side, well, Kansas barely eked it out. They had a great comeback over UNC Chapel Hill, everybody. 72-69. What a game, what a game, what a game, what a game, what a game. March Madness is over. March Madness is over, but what a great tournament we have had. Everybody, Chicago, we're going to have a high of 48 degrees. scattered showers. It is foggy right now, everybody. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 45 degrees. It will be rain. And the Bucks will be playing the Bulls tonight here in Chicago. An increasing number of world leaders, according to CNN, including President Joe Biden, are accusing Russian forces of committing, quote, war crimes, close quote, in response to the images of mass civilian casualties on the outskirts of Kiev. This comes as Ukrainian President Zelensky says the number of civilian casualties may be much higher in other cities liberated from Russian control. We're going to see and talk about that. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is expected to be confirmed as the first Black female Supreme Court justice later this week after a bipartisan group of senators voted yesterday to advance her nomination. After the Senate Judiciary Committee was deadlocked 11-11, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called for a vote to break the deadlock and send her nomination directly to the floor. Every Democrat and 3 Republican senators, as I stated, Senators Romney, Collins, and Murkowski, voted in support of Jackson. She's 51, sits on the D.C. Federal Appellate Court, and had been considered the front runner for the vacancy all along, everybody. Congratulations to her, but let's not count our chickens before they hatch. You should call 202-224-3121 so that you can make sure that she gets through today. The Senate has reached a bipartisan deal to provide an additional $10 billion in COVID-19 assistance. While this is less than half of what the White House originally had requested, it would allow the Biden administration to purchase more vaccines, maintain testing capacity, and continue with ongoing research, everybody. 3 Republican-led states are suing the Biden administration over the decision to end Trump-era pandemic restrictions at the U.S. border. Former U.S. President Donald Trump effectively blocked migrants from entering the U.S. using a public health authority known as Title 42, which cited pandemic concerns to stop many migrants from crossing the border and seeking asylum in the U.S. That, as we are about to allow in 100,000 more Ukrainians who are seeking refuge, as we are still continuing to block the Haitians, and we're not only blocking them, we have them locked in detention centers. Think about that, everybody. We can do both at the same time. We've got Pastor, one of my dear friends, one of my favorite people in the world, Pastor Stephen Thurston. And we're so glad that he is with us, the teaching pastor of the Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope, the author of Mirror Moments. You all are buying it, and we're so glad that you're giving him your support. He's giving us some good news today. Pastor Thurston, what is going on? What is the good news?
Hey, Santita, and all that tuned in today. So glad to be with you. Listen, I recall during my grammar school years at Emmanuel Christian School here in Chicago that there was a week on the school calendar that was labeled as Cleanup Week. Now, this was the time that was set aside where we had a reduced course load and the opportunity to clean the classroom, clean up the lockers and all the spaces around the campus. But it didn't just stop there. We were also encouraged to transfer these activities to our home life. So my mom, she would set an agenda for my siblings and I for what areas of the house that we tackle to reduce the clutter and the chaos that we had created in that space and give the house a real good cleaning. You know, old school style, Santita, on your hands and knees, cleaning up everything. And as the listeners are thinking about the spaces where they work and where they live, the thought has probably just ran through your mind that you could probably also use a cleanup week. Because here's the reality. We all have that drawer, that cabinet, that closet, that room, or that whole storage unit filled with all of that stuff that we can't bring ourselves to clear out and throw away. And even when we do muster up the energy to take a stab at cleaning and decluttering, it's shortly after we start digging into the process that we quickly find ourselves discouraged as we look at all the items that seem simultaneously useless and important. From those old bank statements, the pay stubs from the last job, the textbooks from your master's program, the dried up flowers from your first love, the crutches from the surgery 12 years ago, the exercise clothes with the tag still on them from 3 Christmases ago. We all have stuff that's taking up space, collecting dust, and ultimately it's weighing us down. Now, not only is it the physical stuff, but the mental clutter as well that comes with it that's keeping us from feeling positive, productive, and prosperous, and ultimately at peace with our lives. Decluttering, it's just not about cleaning up around the house or the office. It's also about relieving ourselves of all the stuff that we've been hanging on to from past careers and past relationships and the unfinished business in our life. Decluttering, it goes far beyond improving the aesthetics of our homes and our workplaces. Decluttering is essentially essential to our physical and our mental well-being. So here's the question. Why do we keep the clutter, both the physical and the mental? That's a great question. I'm so glad that somebody asked it. And there are a myriad of reasons and lies that we tell ourselves to answer the question. A productivity expert, David Allen, suggests that being busy and overwhelmed can be paradoxically, at least temporarily, effective, an effective way to stay comfortable. And though most of us recognize that living a busy and a cluttered life isn't fun, it happens to be a comfortable space for us. And because we've done it and engaged it for so long, we've become experts at it. We'll tell ourselves lies. Lies like it's better to be busy than lonely because it's easier to function as a workaholic and applaud our work ethic than to deal with the discomfort of being alone or the discomfort of putting ourselves out there to meet new people. And so we choose the comfort of busy and clutter over the discomfort of being vulnerable. We'll tell ourselves the lie that I'll take clutter over conflict. I'll stay busy with work and church and hobbies to avoid certain realities. We'll tell ourselves the lie that I've mislabeled the clutter as hope. If I keep the wedding pictures, the ring, the video of the ceremony, if I avoid opportunities to date new people and start new relationships, then maybe my ex will get their life together, get their mind right, and we can pick things up from where they went bad. Listen, we hang on to far more stuff than we need to, that instead of motivating us, they become symbols of guilt and shame. We hold on to thinking that at some point we'll need it in the future. We don't like letting go of stuff because it presents us with the sting of admitting that we made a poor decision at some point in life. It becomes easier to hide behind the clutter than to face the shame head on. Listen, when you begin to consciously consider what you have, it'll be easier to clean house mentally and physically. Now, I know some of you, even though we've never met, I still know you. And I want to warn you that you don't have the option of saying, I don't want to deal with this right now. I'll come back to it later. Listen, the process of decluttering will be successful the better we are at creating a vision for our lives and the lives that we want in the future. The fear of staying stuck behind the clutter has to be greater than our current comfortability. So the question that you have to answer today is, what discomfort am I avoiding and procrastinating? So go ahead, give it a name so that you can lessen the power that it has over you. And every time you make the decluttering decision, you're not just deciding to let go, you're making a decision about the person you want to be and the future that you want to have.
Amen to that. Because I have to tell you, I'm living with clutter right now. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of papers in particular. And, I lost a lot of weight. I started that 18 years ago. And I have a lot of clothes because I had to, but a lot of this stuff, my style changed, right? So there's some things that I just need to part with them. My mother's like, oh no, you don't want to lose that because you might need that. I said, Mom, they're making new clothes every day. Whew, every day. And I'm buying them every other day. I got to let this stuff go. Oh my gosh. I mean, because there were some things that I got that, but I think that we all hold on to. And so I'm not going to put that on anyone other than me and my neediness. And so I'm going to thank you for that. I needed to hear that today. And I know someone else was blessed by this as well. Hey, Robert. Hey, Effie Rolfe, everybody. Of course, we know and love Effie Rolfe. Legend that she is. Legend. Would you say that? It's not just me. She didn't want to hear me say that today. Go on and say it.
Effie, you are a legend, a living legend. Thank you for the impact that you made on my life and so many others by the work that you do in the radio space.
Look, and I don't know how she does it because she gets on, honey. She's her own engineer. She's answering the phone. She's mixing the board. She's doing everything all at one time. I was like, woo, hey, I don't know how she does it, but she's an absolute genius. And we thank God for her impact on radio and her impact on our lives because she is not only on the radio, she's been in our lives. And we just thank God for you, Effie.
Yeah.
And I thank God for all my morning stars. Love you, Pastor Stephen Thurston. When are you going to be preaching again at Salem?
We're going to put me back up next month. I'm taking a few weeks off, so next month I'll be back in the saddle. I'll let you know the exact Sunday.
All right, all right, all right. Hey, Hannah down there in South Carolina, sending her much love. Sending you much love. Everybody get mirror moments. Where can we get mirror moments?
Head over to my website, Stephen with the PH, StephenJThurston.com.
Amen.
On the website.
Amen. You know what? We have got Dr. Shanina Knighton, infection preventionist, research scholar from Case Western Reserve University. And of course, she's a registered nurse too. She does it all, PhD, and she's also a professor. We just love Dr. Shanina Knighton. There are so many things that I wanted to bring up today because as we're looking at COVID funding that has been cut in the United States, while we are still in a pandemic, everybody, we've just gone back to work. We've just gone back to work. The CDC director, Dr. Knighton, has announced a sweeping review of the agency because they've taken a lot of dings. They've taken a lot of hits in this season. But I was most struck by this because you're in Cleveland, which is one of the poorest big cities in the United States. And of course, Dr. Deb is in Flint, where we've seen the impact of poverty. We've seen the impact of homelessness and underemployment and on and on and on our big, small cities and all over the country. And thus, this news is called a poor people's pandemic, Dr. Knighton. That's what they're calling COVID, the COVID pandemic. They said that the poorest counties suffered twice the COVID deaths of the richest, a devastating toll that it had on poor and low-income communities. Poorest U.S. counties suffered twice the COVID deaths of the richest. Why did that happen?
Good morning.
Good morning.
First and foremost, because I will, and this is honestly, it's not a bash to the CDC, but it's an acknowledgement of the CDC and World Health Organization inability to be inclusive of educational materials that were going to impact all. So, for example, stay-at-home orders had a different definition for essential workers. It had a different definition for the poor. It had a different definition for those that were not privileged. It had a different definition for people that needed to go outside of the home. It had a different definition for those where there might have been a household of, let's say, 5 people or 2 families that was under one roof, but it was in a small apartment where there was no room for isolation. So all of the rules that we were given were rules of privilege, which is why my work with the educational community, education and the community inside of Cleveland, but even became the catalyst. Like, that's why I started doing what I was doing, because I was so frustrated and everything was falling upon deaf ears. I'm like, no, listen. I'm at the grocery store and they only giving these people 1 pair of gloves, giving them a pair of gloves, no hand sanitizer, to be able to deal with customers. And I'm in line and I'm watching somebody with these gloves going, touch their hair, touch their cell phone. And when you're talking to the workers, they're telling you, oh, no, we didn't get any additional training on infection prevention. And you're upset and you're writing and you're talking to people and it's still falling on deaf ears of where people are not understanding how important it is for these people to be cross-trained and cared for. You had that as being an issue. I walked inside of one of the largest hospital systems here, and let's just say that the worker, the one that the environmental management services worker, someone that handles the trash, was walking around with a cloth mask on where everyone else had a medical grade mask. So it looked like the help was the help. Not having an understanding that those are the people that make it safe for me to be able to go inside of a patient's room, knowing that that room don't have some sort of infectious disease, because they are mopping the floors and they are taking care of the trash and cleaning the environment. So those are 2 examples. Talking about the bus drivers, the ones that got to transport the essential workers from the homes to where they've been cluttered and crowded, where cleaning, they think fogging a bus one time is going to be good enough, and not reminding people to clean their hands or providing them with hand sanitation stations. Being sued in the department stores, where the first thing that they roll back, okay, when the privilege could be vaccinated, okay, or people didn't have vaccine equity, which is again why we have Dr. Deb, you then have people that are saying, oh, well, they told us that we can no longer clean the cash registers, or we can no longer clean the counters or clean the keypads anymore because we got vaccines that are available. And you literally trying to help these people understand that, listen, it's not a matter of this needing to be a burden. This is what's going to keep you safe. Fast food people wanting to put the condiments still in your bag, and you trying to tell them, like, hey, like, that's going on top of your food. I hope you're not doing that, you know, when you eat on break. You're trying to tell them about the use of the card. Like, hey, you swiping all of these cards, but you still touching your hair. You still touching something that's on yourself. Touching your phone, literally with the same gloves that you just got done doing a transaction with many customers, and touching their many items as they come through the line. For multiple customers, which means that we're multiplying the germs. So you look at all of these factors and you say to yourself, why is it? Well, the answer is those are factors. We also not going to talk about the fact that I have people in my own family, okay, that were turned away from healthcare, that were told to stay home when they were sickest. I'm talking about when their respiratory system was jacked up and they were literally on the brink of dying. And they will tell me, they was like, even though they said they told me not to come in when I called the screening hotline, that I felt like I was about to die, so I had to go in. And one of my relatives, that relative ended up on oxygen, came home on oxygen, and literally was taking albuterol. Albuterol was given. They know that it causes your heart to race. But the thing is if the hospital is not evaluating somebody's heart condition, okay, again, because many of us, and especially people that don't have insurance, they're likely not even going to have had that screening from a primary to know what their health condition even looks like. So she was having heart palpitations, was vomiting. Her primary did not even follow up with her regarding her care, even though she was promised she would receive a phone call back. And literally had to call me and say, listen, I really need to stop taking this albuterol because it's making me vomit. She said, but I'm scared that if I stop taking it, I'm going to die.
Wow.
And so having to be on oxygen for another 3-4 weeks afterwards. So this is just an example and the tip of the iceberg of the many things experienced. And get this, her sister that she lived in the house with works at a grocery store. And because they couldn't give them correct screening measures, couldn't give them correct information, she was like, oh, well, I ain't got symptoms. And before the 14 days, she went back to work. So can you imagine how many people potentially she gave it to without any infection prevention practices? How many people didn't have access to testing, so they just said, forget it. I'm just going to go out here and be great and just hope for the best. There's a lot of people in that situation. And the thing is those are the things that were ignored. It's, oh, make sure you're washing your hands, stay distance from others. What if somebody can't distance from others? Then what is the next catalyst to make sure that people are okay?
You know, I mean,
we need to do better.
You know, and do right by people, because it is these frontline workers who take care of us, who make it possible for you to rest in that hospital bed that they cannot afford to rest in themselves. They make our lives possible, and they got no protection. And so when you see that the poorest U.S. counties suffered twice the COVID deaths of the richest, that's what happened. That's just a sliver, everybody, not even a sliver of a sliver of a sliver. That is what happened. Dr. Shanita Knighton, thank God for all that you are and do. Cannot wait to have you back tomorrow. I want us to do a deeper dive on poverty and privilege and COVID and our health, because we're still in this pandemic, everybody. Coming up, let's talk about what's happening in Ukraine, getting the latest on that tragic situation. It's just a tragedy that's unfolding. And there are a lot of different takes on this. And we need to talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show at the top of the hour. We will be talking about Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. She is one step closer to becoming the Supreme Court Justice, the first Black woman, marching in the footsteps of Juanita Jackson Mitchell, first Black woman to take the bar in Maryland. Her husband, of course, was the chief lobbyist for the NAACP in the 50s and 60s. Constance Baker Motley, so many women. She's standing on their shoulders, and we're so proud of her today. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. You know me. I kept looking. Dr. Verholden, and excuse me, Dr. Deb. Dr. Deb is not here with us today. Dr. Knighton, could we do a deeper dive? I think I sent these to you. If not, let me know. I will resend them because I know I sent them to myself on these ties between poverty and COVID. I really want to do that. Because the way you walked us through that, Miss Robinson said this is just a mind blower. I mean, just the way you walked us through this, because it is a privilege for you to live in a single family dwelling with one family. It is a privilege for you to live by yourself. It is a privilege for you to have lived by yourself, or to have, a lot of people. If you got COVID, everybody didn't get treated. I told you when my parents got COVID, I said, I wish everybody could get the treatment that they're getting. That was always my thing. And they came out of there saying that. It's like, and then you wonder why so many poor people are dying. What? It's not that they're just that, oh God. Yes, please go on. Oh, wait a minute. Can you bring that down just a bit? Yes, honey.
No, saying anytime a 24-year-old is dying that's otherwise athletic, healthy, but just hot, but trying to see about himself, and he being turned away from healthcare systems because no one's evaluating him.
Mm-hmm.
This has come down to an issue of being in the air. I don't care what anybody says in that regard. Trust me, I said when my lights go down, I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to evaluate the policies that were put in place. And we're going to talk about, literally, how many people can actually do these things. Then on top of that, are you providing practical information? Does the stuff make sense from the standpoint of a practical stuff? You can't tell somebody to wear a mask, but then on another page in your website, you tell them, wearing PPE can put you at risk of infection.
Absolutely.
Which we know that it can if you're not doing it correctly.
Absolutely. This is unnecessary. Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have Professor Gibbs and Mr. Green up? Okay, great. You know what, Dr. Knighton, do you have access to a landline?
I do. No, actually, I don't no more.
Okay, nobody really does. Okay. Are you on headphones?
Actually, I used to.
No, everybody's letting theirs go. Everybody but me.
Right, but I need to let my daughter actually let it go, simply just based off of the fact that I didn't want to upgrade the box. I going through it, and I waited 2 days to turn it off.
You know what? I just believe in redundancy because I always want to know. I want to have more than one. Plus, I like a landline, and these folks are too eager for me to get rid of it. Paranoia, that's me. But stay right here. We're talking about Russia and Ukraine now. Hello, Professor Gibbs. Hello, Mr. Green. How are you?
Hello. I'm Ryan. How you doing?
It's great hearing your voices today. Boy, I can't wait to hear what you all have got to say. Everybody, call me. Please call. Okay. I'm going to do this. Okay.
10 seconds.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, talking about Ukraine. We've all been disturbed by the images that we see of mass killings in Bucha. We're hearing that there are even more. We want to know what's really going on. There's been like a news blackout. We need to hear more. We need to understand what's going on. Indeed, we need to know what these crimes are and who's committing them. 773-763-9278. I'm on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station at AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We need to talk about what a war crime is. We need to talk about the ICC, which is an organization that the United States has really resisted working with down through the years, and yet they're calling upon them to prosecute Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, for war crimes. And the corporate media are still calling these alleged war crimes. We need to know what a war crime is. We need to know what the ICC is. We need to know what is going on. What are the larger implications? And what does all of this mean for peace talks? What does all of this mean? Everyone, I want you to call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278, because the pictures that we're seeing of people, dead people, the pictures the images that we're getting of people who've been terrorized are heartbreaking. They're devastating. We need to talk about this. We need to know what's happening and what can be done about it. Indeed, where does the peace process, as I said, stand with all of this? Of course, we've got Professor David Gibbs, University of Arizona, professor of history. He's with us today once again. And of course, Bryce Green from Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting. So much that we need to delve into. So let's get right to it. Professor Gibbs, what are we looking at? I mean, these images are horrifying, and yet the Russians are denying and deflecting. They're even calling this pretty much a false flag operation. What is happening here?
Well, I think the bottom line is we don't really know what's happening here. I mean, it's a basic fact that wars always involve atrocities, and both sides have alleged atrocities in this war. And real atrocities always occur in war. That's quite true, and I'm sure they're occurring in this war. At the same time, there's always propaganda. We don't really know what happened in Bucha. What we're hearing is alleged atrocities. The source of information we're getting here, for the most part, if you look at the American or the European media, they're almost always citing either the Ukrainian government, the American government, or the British government. All of whom are interested parties, and all of whom, one should reasonably be suspicious of what they say. On the other hand, we don't really know what happened in Bucha, and we needed some independent verification of what happened in Bucha, as in other allegations as well. And so far, we just don't have that. I think the tendency of the media and the U.S. government to sort of instantaneously say alleged atrocities are real atrocities, to make that leap, which is what we're doing, is very dangerous and very irresponsible. I think we need to sort of stand back here and wait for some real evidence to emerge, which, so far as I can tell, so far hasn't really come out yet.
Why is independent verification important when you accuse, when the accusation of war crimes are made? Why is that important?
Well, I mean, people naturally and quite reasonably get very upset when they see evidence of deliberate killing of civilians, abuse of civilians, particularly children, raping of women, and so on. These types of things get people very angry, and rightly so. And they're often used as a spur to further intervention in war. I think being used now that it gets people so angry and so emotionally excited that they're much more willing to accept war, and including in this case direct NATO involvement in the war in terms of things like a no-fly zone, which is extremely dangerous and could lead to nuclear war. And people tend to let their rational faculties disappear when they get very angry because of atrocities. And so I think the agitation, emotional agitation that's involved in these kinds of atrocity claims, whether they're true or not true in this case, is potentially very dangerous. Let me add that even if the Russians did commit atrocities, and I'm sure they did commit atrocities because it's unthinkable you could have a war go on this long, and the Russians didn't commit atrocities given the record of war. Even if that's all true, even if what's alleged to happen in Bucha is true, that's really no justification for escalation of the war, which will lead to further atrocities and could easily lead to nuclear war with vastly higher levels of civilian deaths. And so I think we need to step back and start thinking more clearly with a clear head about what's going on here.
Bryce Green, what is your take on this? I mean, because accusing someone of war crimes is a very serious issue that involves the International Criminal Court, the ICC, which is an organization that that the United States has really turned its back on down through the years. Your thoughts?
Right. Like Dr. Gibbs said, it's extremely important to have independent verification when we have these claims. But calling on the ICC to get involved, of course, is the height of hypocrisy for Americans. America has always asserted its right to do whatever it wants without the sanction of the international institutions that govern international law and things like that. The United States actually has a law on the books that authorizes any means necessary should one of our service members be tried for war crimes in The Hague. Now, anything's necessary, that's code for invasion. And this act has been called the Hague Invasion Act. And so America really has no moral standing to call for war crimes. Again, repeating what Dave Gibbs said, we don't know what's going on here. The sources are all jumbled up. The New York Times and MSNBC and things like that, they admit that they can independently verify these claims, but they report them. And the temperature sort of raises around this conversation, and especially as you see Zelensky going around. He was actually at the Grammys the other day, and he's calling for more weapons, more intervention, more things like that, when the only thing that will stop these atrocities is the end of the war and a negotiated settlement, something that the United States and its NATO allies seem to be uninterested in. We still not re-engage in high-level talks with the Russians. Tony Blinken has refused to engage in high-level talks, which means that this conflict will keep going on. There is only one end to this conflict, and it's negotiation. And if we refuse that, then we'll continue to see atrocities. We'll continue to see alleged atrocities. And so I think that if Americans really cared about these sorts of things, they would do everything in their power to try and end the conflict.
Well, so what do we say when you have organizations that are so respected, like Human Rights Watch and others, who say that there is evidence of Russian war crimes and we've got to do something about this? We have to, I mean, it seems that the president of the United States, President Biden, is really accelerating the call to establish that these are war crimes and that and to get President Putin tried before the ICC. My question is, how does one establish a war crime? Dr. Gibbs, Bryce, let me start with you, Dr. Gibbs. How is that established? How would this process go forward?
Well, I mean, at the Nuremberg trials after World War II, where top Nazi figures were tried and some executed, one crime was established, which Russia unquestionably committed, which is called the crime against peace, which is an unjustified invasion of another country. And the only justification that is allowed is either clear and unambiguous defense against attack or imminent attack by another country, or authorization by the UN Security Council, of all 5 permanent members. Anything else is considered a crime against peace. That was established at the Nuremberg trials as a general principle of international law. By that said, undoubtedly, Vladimir Putin is a war criminal, and I certainly would endorse that view. The problem is, most American presidents would also fall into that category as well, because most of the wars the U.S. has launched 1945. I can only think of two that maybe would be exceptions to that. Would be considered, crimes against peace, unjustified attacks against other countries. And by that standard, American presidents could also be considered criminal figures. On account of that, as Bryce Green noted, the U.S. has refused to become involved in the International Criminal Court. And so, yes, there is a double standard here that American presidents can engage in crimes against peace, which always involve also atrocities against civilians, sometimes terrible atrocities. And they can do that on the one hand and avoid prosecution at the International Criminal Court because the U.S. does not recognize the International Criminal Court. But at the same time, the United States wants to basically establish that Vladimir Putin should be held to those standards and should be tried at the International Criminal Court. I think all of this should be moot because Vladimir Putin is the head of a major power with over 1,000 active nuclear weapons. And the very talk about trying him for war crimes at this time raises the danger of nuclear war. And so realistically, what we need to do is negotiate with Vladimir Putin to end the war as soon as possible. And you can't really do that if you keep bandying phrases like war criminal and, trying him before the ICC and so on. It just can't be done. So I think it's in everybody's interest to damp down the rhetoric a little bit in the interest of peace, in the interest of ending the war as soon as possible.
Well, who is, it seems that, you've had the Turkish who've been sitting at the table trying to negotiate peace, the Israelis. You've had others who've been sitting at the table trying to hammer out a peace between the Ukraine and the Russians, the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian government and the Russian government. And we find that there was a real push for Ukraine to declare themselves neutral. Do I have the story right, Bryce and Dr. Gibbs? Prior to the invasion, and just this does not have to go this far, and yet it seems that other people goaded the Ukrainian government, which has been so dangerous for them. I mean, help me to understand who's helping the Ukrainian and Russian governments to get to peace, and who's pushing against it.
Right. So at the start of this entire escalation, when you saw Russian troops on the Ukrainian border and the Belarusian-Ukrainian border, and when you heard U.S. intelligence agencies calling out an imminent Russian invasion, Putin was clear the whole time about a path to de-escalation. And that path involved Ukraine declaring neutrality, claiming that they will not join NATO or any other hostile military alliance. Also for Ukraine to recognize the independence of the Donetsk and Luhansk republics, those breakaway republics that rebelled in 2014 in the eastern part of the country. And this section of the country was, the Ukrainian government hasn't really tried to reintegrate it according to the peace agreements that they signed. And so they've left things at a stalemate. What Putin's proposal was that we crystallize the stalemate and simply recognize the independence and avoid the risk of a wider conflict breaking out over those areas. Now, reasonable ask that would address Russia's security needs, and it would also not really cost Ukraine that much. But the United States refused to talk about this on a serious level with their Russian counterparts. The Ukraine signaled that they might be open to some form of neutrality, but this was shut down pretty fast and ignored by the Western media. And so we continued to refuse to negotiate until Russia invaded. But even after Russia invaded, their ask continued to be around the same thing. They wanted Ukraine to be rid of all those NATO forces, all those NATO bases, and to be a neutral country. The demands have expanded to demilitarization, and obviously you have the brutality of this illegal war that Putin's waging. But the pathway to peace remains the same. Ukraine needs to be it cannot be a pawn in geopolitical chessboard anymore. As we've seen, the Ukrainian people are the main people to suffer when we treat things like that. And so the United States doesn't seem to be interested in pushing for a peaceful settlement. In fact, they seem interested in escalating the conflict.
Why?
Our response to the whole thing has been to send weapons. And
But why do they want to escalate? I mean, Bryce, why the escalation? People are dying.
Well, there are a lot of reasons that the United States might have pushed for this, might have wanted this war to happen. There was a good article in the Wall Street Journal before the war, and it was called "The Strategic Case for Risking War in Ukraine." And in it, an Atlantic Council fellow, the Atlantic Council is NATO's think tank, he suggested that the U.S. should refuse to negotiate because even if Vladimir Putin goes to war, that would be good for the United States. It would allow the U.S. to sanction Russia's economy, which would make it a less of an economic powerhouse. It would get the Russians bogged down in their own Afghanistan or their own Vietnam if they went to war in Ukraine. And it would also strengthen NATO's reason for existence. It would unite the Europeans against Russia. And all of this is exactly what's happening. And all of this is beneficial to U.S. strategic interests. Now, there's an open question as to whether or not this was a successful gamble on the part of the U.S. There's a lot of question about the end of dollar hegemony and a lot of the economic fallout from this. But it's clear that the United States is doubling down on its decision to continue this war, to escalate the conflict at the expense of the Ukrainian people.
Dr. Gibbs, yes, please. No, please go. Yeah, please comment.
Well, I just want to note that, one of the historical parallels that's often being brought out here with Ukraine and Afghanistan, in 1979, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, and, it was very damaging to the Soviet Union's interests. It did contribute to the breakup of the Soviet Union. Unfortunately, it killed hundreds of thousands of Afghans as well, and destabilized the country for decades, as we're seeing now. One very striking thing about Afghanistan is we now know, this is well established now, the U.S. did deliberately try and goad the Soviet Union into invading Afghanistan. We know this because the National Security Advisor to Jimmy Carter, Zbigniew Brzezinski, has said this repeatedly, that he acted intentionally to try and provoke the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And, that's a very disturbing parallel. And irrespective of what American intentions were, again, there is some evidence based on the Wall Street Journal article that Bryce Green correctly cited, that this may be happening here as well. Whatever U.S. intention, the effect has been to destroy Ukraine. And, the United States is using Ukraine in a way that's basically destroying the country, using them as a pawn for America's interests. I don't know if, Zelensky has been serving his people, I'm sure with the best of intentions on his part. And, one does, admire the heroism of the fact that he stayed in Afghanistan in Ukraine rather than leave. But all the same, he, by prolonging the war, which is what he's doing, rather than achieving a negotiated settlement, he's simply prolonging the agony of his own people. And I think that's bad for Ukraine. It's also bad for the world because, again, I emphasize there's a very real danger of nuclear war here, and I think people don't fully appreciate how serious that danger is.
Well, no, please. I only have a few more minutes left here. I want to give a couple minutes to you and to Bryce Green. I mean, how close are we to nuclear war? Why is this such a danger? You said this before here.
You asking me that?
I'm asking you. Yes. I mean.
Russia has already put its nuclear force on high alert. A lot of things that are openly being discussed, for example, a no-fly zone, would unquestionably mean direct combat between the U.S. military and the Russian military. The idea of a no-fly zone means American planes would shoot down Russian planes and vice versa. It would also very likely mean U.S. attacks against Russian air defense systems on the ground, destroying anti-aircraft missile and radar installations, killing Russian soldiers. Russia would, of course, retaliate against the United States. this is the road to direct escalation, which would then probably result, or very possibly would result in use of what are called tactical nuclear weapons, low yield, sort of shorter range nuclear weapons, and then to full-scale nuclear war. That's a very real possibility here. And again, it really is one that keeps me up at night, and I think should keep everybody up at night right now. And we should, as soon as possible, do everything we can to avoid this scenario from taking place.
Bryce Green, I have 2 minutes left. Your thoughts about nuclear war, where we are, where we're heading, and where we ought to be. Bryce Green.
Well, I just want to re-emphasize everything that Dr. Gibbs just said, and also that this might happen. Some giant escalation, some major conflagration could happen, despite the intentions of both Biden and Putin. Even if neither of them intend to escalate things, there could be a chain of events that are out of either of their control. And this was the major worry during the Cuban Missile Crisis, that people on the ground would precipitate a crisis that either leader would have to respond to by escalation, by logic of their defense strategy. And so the only solution is to lower tensions, to back down from the heightened rhetoric and all of the accusations, so that if something were to break out, cooler heads would prevail and we wouldn't all blow ourselves to extinction. And one thing I want to emphasize, we were talking about a little bit ago about war crimes and international institutions. One thing that I think is really interesting and really telling is that immediately after these Bucha photos came out in the Western press, the Russians responded by calling it fake. Of course they would. But they also called for a meeting at the Security Council, the UN Security Council, to discuss these events. But it seems that Britain actually blocked this, and Britain has no interest in seriously discussing these things. So it's clear that Britain, a major U.S. ally, is interested in escalating the conflict without resolving anything and creating fertile ground to use this heightened rhetoric. And so that all creates a very dangerous situation that we should be extremely mindful of how to come back.
And we do need to talk about it. And I have to tell you, Robert, you say you don't have a dog in this fight, except from a humanitarian perspective. And we believe that too. Except if the war, you said, spreads and affects this country, then you'll absolutely have to ride with America. We're riding with America, but when you ride with America, you must also demand that America be on the right side. Be on the right side. It's not enough. When that is how we protect our country. That is how we protect ourselves, to be on the right side of history and to be the blessed peacemakers. So let's think about that. Kota, you said that Bryce is in too deep in this position because you do not feel the war is absolutely not an economic benefit to the USA. That is not what many of our companies that make money off of these weapons and such. They're making a lot of money. A lot of people are making a lot of money in war. And, there ought to be a peace dividend. So let's think about that. Let's think about that, everybody. Because no one needs to die. We're all going to die, but no one needs to be killed over this. None of us can even tell you why we're there, really, really. And no one wants to see the weak overtaken by the strong. No one ever wants to see that. That having been said, President Zelensky put it so well. He said, you don't shoot your way out of war. You have to negotiate your way into a peace. And that's what we need to do. No one else needs to be killed. No one else. No one else. Let's give peace a chance. How about that? Let's talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson, everybody, on the Santita Jackson Show. She's on the verge of making history. And more than that, we just hope she's on the verge of making sense when she gets to the court. How about that? Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with me today. It's just always so refreshing. Oh, no, thank you. It's always.
Yes.
Well, please
Did
keep
you
talking.
write an article in The Guardian in 2011 about Libya and compared to Yugoslavia?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so that was you. Just saying, I was going through and I saw that article. I was like, is this being Dr. David Gibbs? I've been on the show with you.
Yes, I should have. I'm sorry. I should have said more. I apologize for that. He is the one who makes the good sense. The both of you. You know, and I hope, we're on Facebook Live now. I'm going to have to let you all go shortly. I do hope that some people have interpreted this position that you've taken and the one that I've taken as being an anti-American position, and that is absolutely untrue. But then they call Dr. King anti-American. They've called, Reverend Jackson anti-American. They've called Du Bois anti-American, and on and on and on. I mean, we just keep on going down the road with people who want us to be right. We're calling them anti-American, and that's not fair. It's not fair. When I'm calling for peace, that doesn't mean I don't love the military. In fact, that's the opposite. It means I love the military, and I love the people in it. And I want them to survive. And the best way you help them to survive and stay alive is not to have them fire one shot. And I say that as a child, a grandchild of people who were in the military. My grandmother and grandfather are buried at the Arlington National Cemetery today. Today. Think about that. So let's do this. Let's do this. Let's get better. And I thank these gentlemen, Bryce Green and Dr. David Gibbs, for courageously standing for peace and for being fair. Because I'm gonna tell you, if you open up this ICC can, it'll be tough for the United States. And more people see now. You have an economic superpower that's developing called India. 1/4 of America's debt already belongs to the Chinese. Don't act like we're just going to walk up to the Chinese and tell them where to go and step off. They can float a portion of their money, of the yuan, in the world and destroy our economy. You need to, am I not telling the truth, Bryce and Dr. Gibbs? I mean, we act like, it's a unilateral world and we can just come in and say what we want. No. They control 1/4 of our debt, 1/4 of it. They're the second biggest economy in the world, and they are emerging. Please go on before you go.
Yeah, one of the things that you keep hearing is that the world stands united and that the international community stands united behind the U.S. sanctioning of the Russian economy in support of Ukraine. But if you actually look at the number of countries and look at the number of their population, most of the world's countries want nothing to do with this conflict. Most of the countries want nothing to do with U.S. sanctions, U.S. economic wars, and the U.S. quest to maintain their global hegemony. India has signed a deal with the Russians to exchange rupees for rubles to buy oil. China has, as we know, stood by Russia to a significant degree. None of the African countries have levied sanctions on Russia, and no South American country, not even Mexico, has levied sanctions on Russia.
So you're coasting toward 4 billion people now. Yeah, you're coasting toward 4 billion people. How many Indians are there? Not including Pakistan, and please, you're looking at about 1.3, 1.2 billion people. Yeah. And then the Chinese tell us that they have 1.4, 1.5. Remember, it was illegal to have more than one child for a long time. So that's almost 3 billion people there. Then you add Africa. Come on, you guys. Come on. We got to cooperate with the world. We can't roll over it. It's just not going to work. It's not going to work. Not. So I'm sending you all much love. I need these lines, but thank you so much for being with us. I send you all these texts in the middle of the night, and you'll always respond to me, and I appreciate it. Oh, thank you.
I don't mind a bit. Nice to meet you, Bryce Green. I really like your work a lot, by the way.
May I connect the two of you? May I connect the two of you by text today?
Yeah, I'd like to get an email for Bryce, because I don't have one, but I would like to get one.
Okay, please send me your email, Bryce, and I will get that to. I will connect you all by email today. Okay.
That's great.
After I get off the air.
Good. All right.
Fantastic. Blessings to
Have a
you.
nice day, everybody. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Okay. And we have CK and Attorney Jones. Well, just keep trying it, Latasha Brown. And CK, how long will you be with us,
Good morning.
my friend?
Not long. Yeah, unfortunately, not long.
Well, you got to catch a flight.
I have for a few minutes, but I'm going to have to run.
Okay. Well, let's get to it. Attorney Jones? No, don't worry about it. Attorney Jones?
Hey, good morning, Santita.
How are you?
I'm feeling good, doing well.
All right.
Doing great after what's happening now with Judge Jackson.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? This is it's a moment, but there's so much to do. Oh my gosh.
45 seconds, and Latasha Brown's still not answering, so
Well,
I'm going to keep trying.
Okay.
During up the hour.
Yeah, just send me a text, okay? Thank you. Whew. Okay, everybody. We're coming up. Okay, I don't hear anything. Cosme, I hear nothing. Or I hear it's way,
in the
it's
background.
way in the
I
back.
hear in the background.
It's way, way, way in the back. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Something
Okay.
came up with like one of the lines. I'm going to
We're good.
try getting it back up.
No, we're good. I can hear it now.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, the second hour on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Getting a little bit of feedback there, Cosme. Let's go on and get that. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. You can text me at that number as well. Let us talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson. She is closer to the Supreme Court. But there was a deadlock yesterday. And of course, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer had to do some fancy maneuvering to get the vote to the floor of the Senate. And so we're going to be talking about that with Attorney C.K. Hoffler, with Attorney Darrell Jones in just a couple of minutes. If you want to hear the discussion about Ukraine, this discussion about Ketanji Brown Jackson, about the fact that COVID was twice as deadly to poor communities and communities of color than it was to the richest. I want you to hear that. And of course, Pastor Stephen Thurston's inspirational message at the beginning. Go to WCPT820.com/Santita for the podcast of this show. So let's get right to it, everybody. Let's get right to it. Let's get to some of these headlines so that we can get to the rest of the Santita Jackson Show. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson on the verge of making history, and more than that, on the verge of making some good sense on the Supreme Court of the United States of America. In Chicago, 48 degrees will be our high, scattered showers, and in fact, it is real cloudy. I can barely see out my window right now. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 45 degrees, just going to rain there today. Everybody try to stay dry and warm. March Madness, oh my goodness. Well, on the ladies' side, South Carolina, Dawn Staley's South Carolina team won, oh yes, and then last night in a nail biter. This just the only way that you can put it. UNC fell to Kansas 72. UNC Chapel Hill 69. I know there are a lot of hurt people in that Chapel Hill area, but you know what? It's going to be all right. Wow, you got to the championship round. What a great game, everybody. That's when you see the March Madness. Love it, love it, love it. And so glad to see so much enthusiasm, I must say, for women's basketball. That is what was exciting to me too. And tonight we're getting right back in it with the Bucks and the Bulls. The Bucks will be in Chicago tonight playing our Bulls. who will come out on top? Well, the Bucks are the champions, but I think our Bulls might pull it out, everybody, tonight. We're going to have to see. Everybody, what do you make of what's happening in Bucha? An increasing number of European leaders, including U.S. President Joe Biden, are accusing Russian forces of committing war crimes in response to the images of mass civilian casualties on the outskirts of Kiev in Ukraine. This comes as Ukrainian President Zelensky says the number of civilian casualties may be much higher in other cities liberated from Russian control. Meanwhile, new footage of the city of Mariupol shows the latest devastation where Ukrainian officials say around 90% of residential buildings have been damaged or destroyed as a result of an intense bombardment. What do you think about that, everybody? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Kansas made that stunning second half comeback. And guess what? Everyone is saying that Tiger Woods looked phenomenal during practice ahead of the Masters. Oh boy, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? Well, I mean, that is what Fred Couples, the legendary Fred Couples, said, quote, he looked phenomenal. What impressed me the most is he was bombing it. I know JT's not the strongest hitter on the tour. That is Justin Thomas, who was hitting with Tiger Woods. He said, but I know he's pretty DAMN long. Tiger was with him flushing it. Oh, wow. What would it mean to see Tiger Woods at the Masters? What would it mean? What would it mean? Boy, oh boy, I would just love it because he had an injury last year. We know that that nearly not only ended his career, but it almost ended his life. And what a comeback that would be. What a comeback that would be. But that is what he does. So everybody call me, text me at 773-763-9278. Let us talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is on the verge of getting onto the Supreme Court. But first, let's talk about Team Hochberg. If you do not have credit, if you need to establish credit, if you have huge credit card debt, if you need to purchase a new home, if you see these empty buildings in your neighborhoods and you're trying to figure out what you can do to get income generating properties, what you can do to make your neighborhood shine, if you need to refinance your existing home, if you need to secure a VA loan, if you need a reverse mortgage, any of that, I want you to call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit them at 56david.com, 56david.com. Let me tell you, a lot of people are dealing with a lot of financial stress, and we do not have financial freedom. But you know what? You're just a phone call away. If you share what you're really dealing with Team Hochberg, trust me, they can help you. They have heard it all. They have heard it all. Think of Chuck, who's a Navy veteran. He's married to Patty. They're retired, but they're barely making it on their pensions. Does it sound familiar? And huge credit card debt, $30,000 of debilitating credit card debt. Indeed, a lot of people today are buying their groceries on their credit cards. Well, Team Hochberg officer Sarah Ruffer secured a VA loan, reduced their monthly payments over $500 a month. That's more than $6,000 a year. And they are on the way to financial freedom. That could be your story. Call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit 56david.com, 56david.com for your free consultation. Once you visit them, trust me, they have heard it all. They have got a solution for you. Work with them, everybody, so that they can work with you. What about Ketanji Brown Jackson, everybody? Let's talk about it. 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Initially, the Senate Judiciary Committee was deadlocked 11-11, but Chuck Schumer did some fancy footwork as the Senate Majority Leader and broke that deadlock. And then we had Senators Romney, Murkowski, and Collins. Senator Lisa Murkowski is up for re-election in Alaska. Senator Collins has always been someone you kind of work with, and Senator Romney as well from Utah. Well, it turns out they helped to break the deadlock on this nomination, on this historic nomination, and now we are going to take this to the Senate floor. But let me back this up a little bit. Let me talk to you, Attorney Daryl Jones, chair of the Transformative Justice Coalition. And let's start with you, Attorney C.K. Hoffley. You'll be talking about this maybe today Will you have time? You're flying. Of course, she has her own show on WAOK, and she'll be back on this show tomorrow, on the Santita Jackson Show, Legal Q&A with CK at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, and of course at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time today. She'll be on WAOK. What do you make of the deadlock yesterday and where we ended up at the end of the day? CK Hoffler.
Good morning, Seth. Good morning, Santita. Good morning to everyone. Well, I was just waiting, like everybody, like the entire country and the world, to see what's going to happen. I anticipated that there probably would be a deadlock because the Republicans had pretty much announced that they were going to, on the committee, that they were going to vote in block. But what impressed me the most was the fancy footwork, as you said, of Chuck Schumer, and also the 3 Republican senators who announced that they were going to support Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. It was, really so unfortunate that those Republicans that had supported her over the past 8 months, she's been before this committee, before the U.S. Senate 4 times, but before the committee 3 times. So her record was in all of the objections, arguably the objections that they had to any part of her background that led them to make just very, very distressing and unfortunate statements. All of that was known to them before. There was nothing new. So this was merely, as I had said before, a political ploy, people posturing for the 2022 and 2024 elections. And fortunately, at the end of the day, by a vote of 53-47, the discharge motion to bring the nomination to the full Senate passed, and she will appear before, or the vote will go before the full Senate. And we do anticipate that the full Senate will vote in favor and confirm her as the next Justice of the U.S., Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. What's really, really important in this dynamic, really important, is for the world and the country to recognize how far we still have to go in terms of racism and sexism. But we have much to be optimistic about. This is not a gloom and doom. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson has earned her place, her rightful place, and will be confirmed, I believe. And what we did see, I had questions about Senators Sinema and Manchin, but they voted in block. They were pretty quiet about this. But now we know where all the Democrats stand and some of the Republicans. And it could very well be that she gets the support of a couple more, but we've got enough so there won't be a tie when the full Senate votes. But even if there were a tie, we know the Vice President Kamala Harris would break the tie and she would be confirmed. So at this point, God willing, it's not over until it's over. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson will be confirmed as the next. We got a couple more hurdles, but the big hurdle has been overcome as the next Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. And as a black woman attorney, as a woman, as a human being, all of the boxes that I check, I thank God that I lived to see this day. I thank God that my sons have lived to see this day, that young girls, black and brown girls, and actually girls all over the world are living to see this day. This country needs Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson on the top court of the land, and I'm so happy to see this day finally coming to fruition. We must give credit where credit is due. First, of course, to God, but secondly, to Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson for her tenacity, her endurance, her impeccable work over the course of her life, her, despite the odds, struggling, making it through, and her grace under fire and staying in her lane while under attack, unseemingly attacked by, senators on the Judiciary Committee, in many instances going below the belt, making inappropriate comments, in my humble impression. But she stood under fire, knowing that she had the back of her ancestors, knowing that she had legions of women, black women lawyers, and others standing on her shoulders, pushing her forward in that hearing room, but also outside, making sure that every T was crossed and every I was dotted, and so that every single senator knew that she has broad-based support, not just of African-American women, African-American lawyers, but broad-based support. And so I'm glad to see that coalition building working. So we have a lot to be optimistic about because that coalition building, quite frankly, is working in her case. And that same coalition building should work in terms of voting rights, in terms of civil rights, and other important issues that we have yet to tackle in the U.S. Senate and in this country, so that we can have finally George Floyd Ethics and Policing Act. We can have a new restored Voting Rights Act and other new immigration laws. It shows that coalition building on important issues can work. It's not over yet, but we certainly have passed the most difficult challenge in the confirmation process of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson.
But what does she bring to the bench? I mean, she's a Black woman. She's making history, and that is great. But what else does she bring to the bench? You know, because she obviously brings so much more than she lives a lived experience as a Black person. But what does that mean? So does Clarence Thomas, right? So what's special about her?
What's special about her, let's put aside her being an African-American woman. What's special about her is, one, her judicial temperament. What does that mean? We have 10 years, almost 10 years to see how she performs as a judge. She is exceptionally thorough in her analysis of cases. She probably is going to go down in history as one of the judges who pens the longest opinions on the federal bench and on the Federal Court of Appeals. She does that, as she testified, because she wants all of the parties to understand her reasoning. Her temperament in conducting her courtroom, very even-handed, very fair, very reasoned, wanting everyone to be heard. That's part of her judicial temperament. Excellent, superb, across the board, unchallenged, by the way, that judicial temperament. That's the first thing she brings. Her breadth of experience, having been someone who represented, and this puts her at a category of her own right now on the U.S. Supreme Court. Having represented as a federal defense attorney, that's how I'm going to characterize it. The least of these people who had no resources to represent themselves when confronted with very, very serious allegations against them. She represented the least of these. Very few. Only the late, great Justice Thurgood Marshall, who sat on that U.S. Supreme Court in a long time, represented the least of these. That's another exceptional component that she brings. Why? Because it informs a perspective, an analysis globally on issues, of course, that will come before her. She is exceptionally well-versed on the workings of the U.S. Supreme Court, having clerked for the person who she will really replace if she's confirmed. Why is that important? Because she knows the inner workings of the U.S. Supreme Court. Next, she has the personality, the temperament, and the leadership to be able to reach across the aisle, speak to colleagues, even if they have differing views. She gets it. She understands it because of what she brings to the table as an exceptional jurist, as outstanding legal mind, a brilliant thinker, a brilliant analytical thinker. She has the ability to try to work out differences, which is critical for a U.S. Supreme Court justice. Additionally, she has the humility, as we saw, and the grace under fire, because there are going to be opposing views, conflicting views, as she sits in the chambers of the U.S. Supreme Court, to be able to work them out, to be able to resolve them when necessary. And that temperament is critically important for someone sitting on the bench, having grown up the way she's grown up. This is the final, icing on the cake, cherry on the top. Grown up in Miami, against the odds. Someone who was with working parents, her father working his way through law school, having the ability and luxury of going to Harvard, feeling like she was an outsider, feeling like she was an outlier on the outskirts and not belonging, making and taking charge of her destiny, making that her place, going on to Harvard Law School, being successful, being editor-in-chief of one of the most prestigious journals in the country for law schools. She has demonstrated time and again her dominance and absolute brilliance in traditional ways, which is required on the U.S. Supreme Court or the analysis. You don't have to go to have gone to Harvard to have that, but she has mastered that because we know the late great Thurgood Marshall went to Howard Law School and he dominated equally. So those are all of the things off the top of my head, but I could probably write a book on all of the ways, Santita, that she qualifies, all of the ways that what she brings to the court, all of the ways that she is in a class of her own, all of the ways where she is going to bring a needed voice to the U.S. Supreme Court as we go down the treacherous path of addressing issues of voting rights, human rights, immigration, reproductive rights, civil rights, and affirmative action, and I can go on and on and on and on. She is well positioned to address those issues.
Absolutely. Attorney Daryl Jones, coming up, we'll extend this conversation. We're going to be talking with John Nichols about this as well. But Attorney Daryl Jones, your thoughts. You had a lot of fancy footwork legally yesterday. But and then Tim Scott, who said he was going to choose, he understood the historic nature of this particular nomination and of her potential ascension to the court. He said, but I've got to choose ideology. I mean, I've got to look at the ideology, not identity. That is what's going to drive my vote. Your thoughts?
Very disappointed. King put it best when he said that, there can be no great disappointment where there's no great expectation. And Tim Scott has always shown us who he is, from the George Floyd all the way through the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act all the way through. He's always shown us who he is, and he's been consistent with that. But, no one's going to steal the joy of the day. And I tell you, we say that Senator Chuck Schumer was masterful with his performance. He could have been a member of that Kansas team with the comeback that he did with regards to bringing this to that full vote. Just very, very pleased with Senator Schumer and what he has done. Now, I wanted to add, though, one of the things that CK was talking about was the historic importance of the appointment of Ketanji Brown Jackson to the court. And what people sometimes miss, and I want to be certain that everyone is aware of this, is that when we're talking about black women sitting as a federal court judge, if you look at all of the federal court judges that have intersect, only 1.8% have been black women. So this is really a historic appointment, and let me tell you, there's so much more to talk about because there's a lot that goes on. 1.6% of the black women sit as appellate judges. And let me tell you, currently it's only 3.4%. We have so much to be proud of, to be thankful for, and boy, let's push this forward.
Everybody call 202-224-3121, 202-224. 3121. Let us not count our chickens before they hatch. We have got to get Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson through. She's making history, but more than that, she's going to make sense. She's going to make sense. We need someone to argue the case for the people with the Supreme Court justices. We believe she's going to do that, and it is high time that happens. It is high time that Republicans cross the aisle and support this candidate. It's a very, very dangerous space that we're in, Attorneys Hoffler and Jones, when Democrats support one candidate and Republicans support another, and the reverse. That's dangerous. It's not helpful. It helps to fuel the idea and the understanding that the court is a politicized institution, and it's supposed to be above that. It's supposed to be above partisanship. Politics are in everything, but partisanship, not when you got a rule on how we live from day to day. So let's talk about this. John Nichols is coming up. I hope Attorney Jones will stay with us so that we can talk about Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, and how can I forget that? And the historic nature of this appointment. But more than that, just what's historic is she used to publicly defend. That's a big deal. That's like Thurgood Marshall, giving voice to the voiceless. That's a big deal, everybody. A big, big deal. And it should be celebrated. It should be acknowledged. We really need to talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a few minutes. Oh, did someone give you a low blow bringing up Okay, yes. Are you leaving us now?
I have to leave, and thank you for giving me the space to just go on and on and on. But I do have to run. I was going through security with the phone. I didn't hear all the commotion. But, yes. I'm sorry, I have to run.
It's all right, honey. That's all right.
Thank you so much for the important issue and day. And Daryl, thank you for your great comments as well. And look, we have a lot of work still to do because it's the intensified pressure that I think in part has resulted in where we are today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, look, somebody had to come over. Plus, Lisa Murkowski is facing re-election, and she is the most popular nominee in modern times. So it's like, come on, you guys. But I would expect, if I expected anyone, these are the three people I would have. I'm not surprised. I am happy that they've come over. Because also people need to know Mitt Romney's father's reputation. He was known as a very progressive Republican governor. Oh, thank you so much. God bless you.
Hey, Ms. Jackson.
Yes, sir.
Is Attorney Jones, is he leaving or?
I think he's going to,
drop?
I think he did drop? Oh, okay.
Yeah, he did drop.
Well, ask him if he would like to stay. But please get John Nichols.
What was that?
John Nichols, this is when I'm getting feedback. Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna get up John Nichols right now.
Okay.
Chappelle's currently on right now.
Okay, fantastic. Hey, Chappelle.
Good morning.
How are you? Let me hear you.
I'm good.
Oh, are you on an earpiece?
No.
Oh,
I'm in the car though.
oh, okay. All right, because that's just so that you know that because it was not getting the clearest sound. Keep speaking to me, okay?
Okay. Is that better?
That's better. That's better. Okay. Yep. These earbuds and whatnot, everybody, when you're on radio or if you have to do television, just know this. The best phone is the landline phone. These mobile phones are not the best. They're not. The landline still gives you the most reliable service and the best sound. So just know that, everybody.
John Nichols is up.
Okay, John Nichols, how are you? Welcome back to the United States.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be back.
Absolutely. Well, let's.
What's that?
Oh no. Okay, I've got you. Are you on a speaker or an earpiece?
No, I just got a regular phone. Yeah.
Oh, you're on a regular phone? Okay. Well, okay, I'm trying to get the sound right. Okay. So, but I'm so glad you're back. I'm glad to hear your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm actually at my polling place today.
Really? Are you on primary today? Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we are in 2022.
School board, city council, stuff like that.
Well, yeah, all the stuff that gets us wound up when we feel that we don't have a voice. So stay right there. Okay.
It's a good thing. I'll be ready.
Okay. Okay. And we're going to Ketanji Brown Jackson. We can also, I've been talking about Clarence Thomas, but let me start there. Stay there. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. You can text me at that number as well. And meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on YouTube. I mean, on Facebook. That is my page, everybody. Please meet me there. Not the Santita Jackson page, the Santita Jackson and Friends. That includes you. And then, of course, meet me on the YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please, everybody, go over there, like and subscribe, and spread the word about this show. Everyone who's listening to the show today, all of my morning stars, please share the show with at least one other person, okay? Please do that. Stanley, Robert, Cesare, and Lorraine, and all of you, Shirley in beautiful Philadelphia, D. Ray, all of you, Robert, Philip, Mark, share the show with at least one person. We're talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson. Might even get a chance to talk about Clarence Thomas and Jenny Thomas and what all of that means. It's all talk Supreme Court on the Santita Jackson Show with John Nichols, who's back in the country. We're so glad to have him. Before we get to him, let us talk to Chapearl from Celebrations by Us. Chapearl, take it away.
Good morning, Santita, and thank you so much for having us. We at Celebrations by Us, your one-stop party connection, is gearing up for your prom season, also your wedding season and your graduation season. So don't hesitate to give us a call at 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We can handle your balloon arches, your hors d'oeuvre tables, as well as also your sweet tables. So we're still also cooking food regularly, so don't hesitate to give us a call if you need something for Easter, 708-526-4546. Thanks so much, Santita.
Blessings to you, everybody. Celebrations by Us, 708-526-4546. Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, everybody. Let's talk with John Nichols, who's been out of the country. He's been away from us for a few weeks, and we're so glad that he's back in the United States. So much has been happening. John, you can't stay away so long the next time. It's just too much. Oh my gosh. And here we're making history. We're making a lot of noise, but you've been following the peace movements throughout Europe, and that's a wonderful thing to hear about. Let's talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, we hit a bit of a speed bump yesterday when the Senate Judiciary Committee was deadlocked, 11-11. But Senator Chuck Schumer, majority leader, brilliant tactician that he is, did some fancy footwork, and he is now going to get this vote to the floor. In the meantime, we have senators Lisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, and Susan Collins, who have fallen into the column of supporting Ketanji Brown Jackson. Mind you, who is it? Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina said he's choosing ideology over identity. That's why he cannot support her. I've loaded up your plate, so go for it. John Nichols, national correspondent for The Nation magazine. Of course, his latest book, Coronavirus Criminals and Pandemic Profiteers. You've got to get it. It's great to have you back, John.
It's an honor to be back with you, Santita. And we did get to talk a few times while I was away, and so that was a real connection to home. But I'm back here in the States. In fact, I'm in Wisconsin. It's election day today for local elections for school boards and city councils and village boards, and people are out participating in democracy, which is something your show is all about. So it's just a great pleasure to join you and to talk about this incredibly historic moment that we're in. And, I guess the best way to say it is, despite what the Republicans did yesterday, we will, I think, by the end of this week or very short order, have Justice Jackson. And that's going to be a big deal because she really is the most qualified nominee, broadly qualified nominee for the Supreme Court in the modern era. She's a remarkable individual. And beyond that, she brings to this court the balance that has been missing for a long time. She has been a defender. She has been a lawyer in private practice. She has been engaged at the highest level with all the great issues of the law for a very long time. She's been a judge. She's gotten highest marks from everybody who's dealt with her. And I've just emphasized to you that despite what, say, Tim Scott or some of our Republican friends may say, if they are claiming that they're choosing ideology over identity or something of that nature, they need to understand Judge Jackson is so skilled, so prepared to sit on this court, and she's won strong endorsements from libertarians, from people who, are, way distant from where I'm at today on a lot of economic issues and on a lot of issues, but who say, look, this woman is just supremely prepared. She has a background. She's ready to do the job. And so, as a result, look, her qualifications are such that responsible Republicans, and that there aren't a lot of them, I'm afraid, but Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski have stepped up to say, we're going to back her. You could theoretically even get another Republican or so, but the fact of the matter is that in this incredibly divisive and difficult time, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to go onto the Supreme Court with bipartisan support and also through a very rapid, and efficient process. And credit on that to Dick Durbin and to Senator Schumer and President Biden, who recognized a promise he had made during the campaign and kept that promise.
Well, let me ask you, why do you think Senators Murkowski, Collins, and Romney threw their support or gave their support to Judge Brown Jackson?
I think first and foremost, she is, as I said, remarkably qualified. I mean, if they're going to back a Democratic nominee, a Democratic president's nominee for the U.S. Supreme Court, this is the one to back. She really does have the background. She has the broad support. She had a stellar hearing, and so she's in many ways an easy nominee to back. The real question is, why wouldn't other Republicans do the same? And the reason for that is that they are simply going to say no to whatever Joe Biden does, going to say no to whatever the Democrats do. But there's some subtlety to these choices. I think Mitt Romney is backing her because he has the steadiest pattern of trying to be bipartisan among the Republicans in the Senate. He's more committed to it, I think, than any other Republican. He doesn't make him a good guy or bad guy in any full sense. It's just who he is. And so I think that's something of it. I think also, as someone who's, remember, his father was deeply involved in supporting the civil rights movement back in the 1960s.
Yeah.
If there's anyone who knows the historic significance of the first black woman on the Supreme Court on the Republican side, he's clearly one of that. He would be in that number. With Susan Collins, she took an incredible hit up in Maine, which is pretty much a Democratic-leaning state. And there's been tremendous organizing on the ground in Maine around Supreme Court issues. And so she clearly felt pressure from the grassroots. And then finally, Lisa Murkowski, this is an interesting one. Lisa Murkowski is up for re-election this year. And Alaska has a new voting system which puts all the candidates on the ballot and basically puts an emphasis on being able to get support from outside your own party base. And so for Murkowski, I think, A, she knew that Jackson was well qualified. B, I think she also knew that this was a politically smart move for her because it sends a signal to Democrats and that she's not just a typical rubber stamp Trump Republican.
Call me at 773-763-9278. You can text me at that number. Again, it's 773-763-9278. And, and I think we have to continue to study Mitt Romney because he's taken a lot of heat from the Republican Party because they felt that he was not enough of a Republican. In response to his family's position, indeed, he was an independent. His family left the party in the 60s, actually at the 64 convention when they would not have a meaningful civil rights bill. So his father, who was the governor of Michigan, said, I'm out of this party. This is ridiculous, because he worked with the labor leaders, with Reverend C.L. Franklin, who was of course, Aretha Franklin's father, one of the most prominent ministers There was no bigger black preacher in the country than C.L. Franklin. In fact, the March on Detroit, which preceded the March on Washington, they say it had 100,000 people, but if you look at the aerial photographs, it looks like it was 1 million people. And that's no exaggeration. I've been marching all of my life. So, and he was always in the thick of that. And his son has found himself kind of in the thick of those things too. And he's always taken these hits. He's not been enough of a Republican. He wouldn't be mean enough and all of that and all of that. So it's, we're watching a lot of sands shift. Were you surprised by Senator Tim Scott, attorney Darrell Jones, chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition? He and Barbara Arnwine do such magnificent work. He said, the truth is, when there are high expectations, there are great disappointments. And, when he said that he had to choose ideology over identity, it was like no one asked you to choose identity over ideology. That was not the question, sir. It wasn't. What do you make of that?
He didn't have to. He did not have to. That's the interesting thing. I will emphasize. I wrote a piece on this a week or so ago. Judge Jackson received support from the leading legal scholars at the Cato Institute, the traditional libertarian think tank. She received very strong support from a number of libertarians and positive words from people like Justin Amash, the former Republican congressman, who thought running for the presidency as a libertarian. Now, there's a big difference between libertarians and progressives, right? They have real differences on economic issues, on a host of other matters, but there is a common ground that can be established on respect for the Constitution. And what these libertarian legal scholars said was, Judge Jackson will come to the Supreme Court as one of the most profound defenders of the Bill of Rights, of basic premises of the Constitution. And she can be supported by people who may disagree with her on some broad issues, and it certainly will, but they should respect that if the measure of a Supreme Court justice is their devotion to a sensible, responsible, but passionate application of the Constitution, then this is a great candidate. This is a great nominee. And so Tim Scott didn't have to make that choice. I think his statement was cynical in that regard. And he's not alone. I think we shouldn't single him out. We should recognize that other people like Lindsey Graham, his colleague from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham, who has historically voted for nominees for the courts from the other parties, and saying that presidents have a right to pick their nominees. Lindsey Graham went off the rails on this one, trying to portray Judge Jackson as some sort of extremist, which simply wasn't the case. And so what you see is a lot of Republicans practicing a really cynical politics. And the worst of it, of course, is Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, all three of whom are running for president in 2024 if Donald Trump doesn't run. And what they were doing was just throwing things at the wall. Nothing legitimate to attack Judge Jackson with. So they were just literally, coming up with an old case, the board she sat on, like she looked the wrong way someday or something like that. It was absurd attack and embarrassing, frankly. Embarrassing for the Republican Party and for the United States Senate. Judge Jackson should be approved with a unanimous vote. Or, I understand, sometimes you may have, marginal opposition, but she ought to be one of those justices that's approved overwhelmingly, not with, what will be very probably a relatively close position.
Do you expect her to be voted through?
Do I expect what?
Do you expect her to be voted through onto the Supreme Court?
Without a doubt. I don't think there's any question of that. I think the issue was settled actually not by the Republicans, but by Joe Manchin, who we speak about so often on this show.
Yes.
Joe Manchin signaled relatively early on that he was comfortable with her as a nominee. And once you had that, you had the United Democratic Caucus with the 50 Democratic votes and Vice President Kamala Harris casting a tie-breaking vote. They were going to get it no matter what. She was going to go on. That is going to happen. What's hopeful and encouraging, it's not as good as I would like to see, but hopeful, is that you now have three Republicans who joined So you're looking at something in the range of a 53-47 vote, maybe even, again, not everybody has declared. It's even within the realm of possibility that you could have 54 or even 55 votes for her, which is, in this exceptionally divided moment, a significant success.
Well, let me switch tracks a bit because she's going on to a court, a Supreme Court that is viewed through a political lens, which is dangerous, right? I mean, when you make it, well, through a partisan lens, politics is in everything that we do, in the secular and in the spiritual realms. I mean, that's just what it is. It's the partisanship that becomes the problem, that becomes the rub. What about Justice Thomas and the activities of his wife, Virginia Thomas, one of the most highly regarded conservative activists in the country today? I mean, and the speculation that her thoughts are his thoughts are her thoughts, and that she has been able to help shape his decisions on the Supreme Court. Should he be investigated now? Some people are calling for his impeachment. Some people, of course, are calling for his removal. What should be done about Justice Thomas? I just get the sense that our justices need to be above reproach, and that is not where he is right now. He's really kind of stuck in the mire, John Nichols, and that's a dangerous place for a justice to be. Yes?
Exactly right. You're precisely right. And look, for a very, very long time, Justice Thomas has been in a troublesome position. He is married to one of the most ardent and extreme right-wing activists in the kind of higher levels of Republican and conservative circles in Washington, D.C. Ginny Thomas is not a newcomer to right-wing activism. She's been engaged for a very, very long time, very, very close to Republican presidents, candidates, administrations, and movements. And that's acceptable. Remember, we don't presume that that a husband and a wife cancel each other out or something like that. It certainly doesn't disqualify him because his wife is a extreme activist.
Sure.
But what becomes troublesome with Justice Thomas is that on the court, he has consistently moved in very controversial, very, very determinative cases on the side of the extreme positions that Ginny Thomas has taken. He did this back in 2000 in the Bush v. Gore case, when Ginny Thomas was very, very involved with the Bush campaign and the Bush transition. He literally helped to tip the balance on the court in favor of making Bush president of the United States. That was hugely significant. He should have recused. So should have Antonin Scalia, whose son was involved with the Bush campaign. So we've got a history here. And more recently, as we have revelations that Ginny Thomas was urging the White House to go all in efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election, to illegally and wrongly put Donald Trump into the White House for another term. As she was doing that, obviously, Clarence Thomas is sitting on the Supreme Court, and he gets cases coming out of that controversy as regards to White House records. And he has cast the sole vote, the only vote on the court, against making those records available to investigators. Now, there's too much here to let go. And so with these details, it is absolutely appropriate to investigate Clarence Thomas. And that investigation should confirm that he did have communications with his wife about these issues and chose to vote the way that he did, knowing his wife's involvement and the potential controversies that might stem from it. That certainly gets to the level of a discussion of censure and or impeachment.
Where do you think this will go now? I mean, in this heightened political environment, because it is concerning. I think that he ruled. He didn't recuse himself from the case in which his wife was directly involved. Right? I mean, these texts. That just doesn't. That's not a good look.
No, because again, we go back to this core issue. It's not Ginny Thomas's activism that is the problem. She has a right, even if I disagree with her, she has a right to be an activist. She has a right to believe the things she believes and advocate the way she advocates. Where the problem comes in is with this court and with Justice Thomas, who is supposed to be a neutral arbiter. He is supposed to be the person who decides, literally the direction that the country goes and applies the law. If he is influenced in that application of the law by concerns about what might come out about his wife, about what might come out about people his wife is engaged with and activities, that she's involved with, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal. That's precisely where we get into big trouble with the courts. And so this is appropriate to investigate. Here's where I think it'll head. This came out of the January 6th committee, the folks who are investigating January 6th. That is where it should be investigated. I know there's some resistance to that from Liz Cheney and potentially Adam Kinzinger. That's problematic. And if the January 6th committee does not pursue this issue and get to the bottom of it, then there should be an inquiry by either the House Judiciary Committee or the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senate is especially appropriate because Senate has a particular oversight responsibility with the Supreme Court. There ought to be hearings on this. There ought to be a serious discussion about it. Whether it gets to the impeachment level, which I think is appropriate to discuss, but whether it gets to that, I would be somewhat dubious because it is a midterm election year, and I suspect that people won't be inclined to go that far. But I will say very bluntly that if they let go of this issue, if they just say, oh, well, that was troublesome, let's move on to the next thing, that's a very, very bad signal for the court. We have a lot of people on the current court, on the conservative side of this court, who come out of movement politics, who are engaged with and intersect with people in right-wing movement politics. And if the message is that you can make decisions that facilitate or encourage or cover up for the actions of right-wingers, I think that's a terrible signal for the Supreme Court, and one that Congress shouldn't allow to have sent.
Well, for the right or the left, right? I mean, this really has nothing to do with your ideology. It is about your identity as an arbiter of justice. to take a bite from Senator Tim Scott. I've got 1.5 minutes for you.
Yeah. I was just going to say, can you imagine if this was reversed, right? If this was a liberal justice, it was covering up for something, a spouse or a friend or an ally or a family member.
They'd be relentless. Come on.
But
you know what? I would really be bothered if I don't care if it's a liberal, progressive, or a right winger, hardcore, or middle. I mean, it's just in principle, this is not where our Supreme Court justice ought to be. I mean, if it were Justice Marshall, right? If it were Justice Breyer, it's like, wait a minute, Breyer, excuse me. This is not what you're supposed to be. Just don't do this.
No, and let me tell you a very quick story as we conclude. My dad was the village attorney in the town where I grew up. When I was a teenager, I managed the campaign for a candidate for the village board. There was a close election. They had to have a recount. My dad, as the village attorney, had to decide which ballots were accepted and which were not, and he rejected a key ballot for the candidate I had worked for. Right? And I knew full well that was the right thing to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, he went against, and that's what we expect of people who are in positions of this sort. And if my dad couldn't have done that, if he couldn't have rejected the ballot of the candidate I supported, then he should have recused. He should have left. And I just think there's a very real chance that Judge Thomas did not hold to that standard. If he didn't, then he should be investigated, and we should sort this out.
Amen to that. Coronavirus Criminals and Pandemic Profiteers. Get the book. It is a great, great book. And of course, read The Nation, support The Nation, and of course, follow our dear friend and brother beloved, John Nichols here, the national correspondent for The Nation. Sending you much love, John Nichols, and to my whole crew who joined with us today. Coach May, thank you for a great show. I love you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow. Tomorrow, we got a special guest. Jonathan Jackson. That's right. My brother who's running for Congress. And I've invited all the congressional candidates in the 1st Congressional District of Illinois onto my show. I've asked them all to be here because as a steward of the airwaves, it is my responsibility to be fair and to have everybody here because I want you to have the best representation that you can possibly get. Of course, I stand with my brother, but the fact is it's a magnificent field of candidates. We can't lose. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless. Thank you, John Nichols.
What a pleasure to be back with you in such a wide-ranging good discussion.
Oh, you're the best. You're the best. I mean, the thing is, I think you got to talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson. You've got to talk about Justice Thomas, his wife Virginia Thomas. All that stuff is at play, and I just want to thank you for. I just want to thank you for all that you do, and thank you for your support of this show. It has meant so much. I mean, before I go, I just wanted to say that to you and to everybody here who's watching us on Facebook. I just love you and appreciate you, John, and I'm glad you're home.
Great. I'm glad to be here. It's a great show. I'll be listening tomorrow to hear what Jonathan Jackson has to say.
Oh yeah, I can't wait, and I'm trying to get all the other candidates on the show because I want them all to be heard.
And they'll respect you. They'll know that you're being fair. And it's gonna be a very interesting race.
Yeah, it will be. It's really getting it's beginning to crank up now. So there it is. Sending you much love, my dear brother friend.
All right. Much love to you. Be strong. Give your parents all the love and care.
And give my love to your beautiful family.
I will. They're all vote today.
I know that's right. I love it. You too. Bye-bye. Love you, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.